All right, guys. So one of the big pieces of I'll call it news this week, and I say I'll call it news because I'm really undecided on whether it matters or not. And I want to hear your guys' opinion because Kamala Harris, Vice President of the United States, she does do things in her day job. And one of the things she did was call for a ceasefire this week, which shows a very large step for the Biden administration in general. So far, they have been basically allergic to the word ceasefire, have twisted themselves into pretzels to avoid using it, have vetoed 3 UN ceasefire resolutions, and now the vice president is calling for a ceasefire, which I'll say my thoughts after hearing your guys because I view it in a couple different ways, and I want to hear what you guys think. EK, you're smiling, so I'm picking on you first.
Yeah. So I actually watched a portion of that speech yesterday because I was using part of it in a video that I was making. So it's like that part comes at the tail end of the speech. Like, and she builds up to it by giving like the longest possible disclaimer ever. It's like Hamas is a terrorist organization. They've done all these terrible, horrible things. They call for this, that, like just like the longest possible disclaimer ever. And then like she goes into like that being said, there's been horrible situation in Gaza. Children are starving, women are having to give birth in like horrible conditions. And then she says we need an immediate ceasefire. And then there's a pause, and you can tell she's thinking, "Clip it now, clip it now, clip it now." And then she goes 6 weeks, and like I'm like, oh, that's basically just cutting all the wind like out of the sails there. But like I'm like, okay, you don't get this because if you remember from back in January, when Kamala Harris was on The View, and they asked her, like, hey, what do you think of Gen Z, all the young people, all the stuff over social media calling for a ceasefire, everything that's happening in Palestine, all these horrible things that are happening, all of those horrible things were still happening back in January and in February. They're still happening right now. The only material difference that changed between Kamala Harris from January and Kamala Harris from 4 or 5 days ago now is the fact that 100,000 people voted for uncommitted instead of Joe Biden in a swing state. Like that's it. Like, and that's just a straight reactionary of, okay, this might actually be hurting us a lot more than we think it's hurting us. We need to start using just a little bit of the dialogue, like and the stuff that all of the people that we need to vote for us are saying if we like want to possibly get elected come November.
Yeah, it is. I was really annoyed. Annoyed is too soft of a word because I just ran across this clip just scrolling. I didn't know she made a speech. I didn't know anything about it in any context whatsoever. And so the clip got me. And she said, given the suffering that's been happening in Gaza, I am calling for an immediate ceasefire. And my eyes lit up. I said, oh my God, I can't believe it. There's finally good news. Like I was just filled with this joy that there was finally some movement on this. And it's my own fault. I was dumb enough to fall for it. And then sure enough, like what EK said, you had the pause, just this like 2-second pregnant pause that was obviously purposeful. And then she says, for at least 6 weeks. And I was just deflated. Then I was really mad. I was less mad at them than I was at myself for, falling into this obvious trap. And it's EK, I think you mentioned it, how the language has evolved over the months, because there were times whenever the Biden administration would call for a pause. A pause they were cool with, but the term ceasefire they seemed allergic to. That seemed to, awaken their inner coward. And I did, I did a small video about this, but I did think about this over a while that someone had commented on a video I made about this, and they said, "Oh, I actually haven't heard a lot from Kamala Harris lately." And I was thinking about the fact that part of your job as Vice President of the United States is like the one of the biggest. It's tied next to breaking, or it's next to breaking ties in the Senate is your most important thing to do, is to do the shit work for the president. And it has been funny over the years watching Biden give Harris just like the shittiest thing possible, or the most controversial things possible to talk about. The first thing he did was the border. You remember that speech he made about like the chaos on the border? She's like, just don't come. just don't come. He has like nothing to say. And this has been going on for years and years. So I do feel a little bit of sympathy, but Biden sure does. Like, man, I did this for 8 years. You can do it for 4. Yeah, at least. So I don't feel too bad about it. And another thing I wanted to point out from Harris's speech was how this is something that's annoyed me, because the administration, it's, you know how newspapers and reports talk about police shootings and speak about them as if they're acts of God. 5 teenagers, die in officer-related shooting. As passive voice as possible. She really, really laid into that with this whole thing. The suffering in Gaza, the people who are hungry in Gaza, the children who are displaced in Gaza. Just no active voice whatsoever on what's causing this. Like no criticism of Israel whatsoever. And yeah, it's my own fault for thinking that there was actually some major movement on this, but that's just I feel dumber because of it.
So I agree with parts of that. I disagree with one key element.
Mm-hmm.
The parts I agree with are, my first reaction to this is, oh, go fuck yourself, Kamala. Like, what are we talking about here? We could have done this at any moment, like you said, Ike. Like, nothing has changed. There's no change in conditions that would call for a ceasefire now and not 3 months ago. It's the exact same thing. It's just gotten worse, and the voices haven't dissipated. I think that there's no coincidence that this came out the day before Super Tuesday, on the immediately following the undecided vote, which we're going to talk about in a later episode this week. But so it's so obviously politically motivated to do this. It's Kamala doing it, not Biden. We're not there yet. But I will say, if you're looking at it from our lens of reality, this is like insultingly stupid. But if you're looking at it through the lens of Netanyahu, like you're sitting in Netanyahu's shoes right now, this is an escalation. Like, this is a major escalation in diplomatic relations with Israel, for the vice president to be demanding a ceasefire. No matter how much she manipulates that to say something else, she's intentionally saying that word. And from what you mentioned earlier, TJ, all of the cowardice surrounding this word, the inability for anyone in the Biden administration to say ceasefire, I think it's safe to assume that Netanyahu has been pretty fucking clear to them that he doesn't want them to say the word ceasefire. And they said it. And so, like, is it Biden saying it? No, because if it's Biden saying it, as we've discussed on this show, it's over. But this is like one step away from Biden saying it, and I would be shitting my pants if I was Netanyahu about that.
Yeah, agree. Like, and there's no way she makes that speech without having approval.
Zero.
Well, that's actually when she paused. That was my first thought. I was like, wait, fuck, did she not mean to say ceasefire? Did she just start an international incident? And then she's like, and I was like, fuck.
We've got a broken arrow. The vice president is a broken arrow.
She's going rogue.
I'm sorry. Keep going, Ike.
No, there's no way she says that without it being approved from the highest of high levels, and probably still up to the minute before she even got to that mic. Maybe somebody in the earpiece was even like, okay, we're going to go ahead with the ceasefire thing. But like, still, they're still pulling the punches with it. They're putting a time limit on it, They're like, and we know we've got the whole Ramadan thing. We've had Biden with the ice cream cone talking about, well, they need to have a ceasefire, and Ramadan is coming up and all this other stuff. So it's like the wind was basically taken out of the sails of whatever she was gonna say before she even said it. Like, and then they had to make sure they attached that extra 6-week thing right after she said it to make sure it's there. Like, it's it's a move in the right direction. Hopefully we get there a lot sooner than November 4th, because I just don't think it's going to work out well if everything is just allowed to continue unchecked.
Yeah, so I don't know if I hold the same opinion that John brought up, because here's why. The she mentioned that you guys talk about how, she prefaced everything she said by talking about, making it clear that she condemned Hamas, the meme basically.
Yeah, it's
And
like a 7-minute speech, and 5 minutes of it is disclaimer.
yeah. Before I call for the ceasefire, I want to make it very clear that these folks had it coming. Let's be very honest about it. I got to make sure that's out there. But so she mentioned at the end where she says that I'm calling for an immediate ceasefire for at least 6 weeks. That is the deal that is on the table. And it's not the first time they've made an offer like this, because it's a pause. They've done pauses before. They've just refused to call them ceasefires. So like you guys said, there's really no difference here. And it's a difference in language. That's true. That would be a little unsettling if I were Netanyahu, and I'd be thinking, okay, I don't like the fact that they're saying ceasefire, but you got to keep into account it's election season and how much do they really mean it. So yeah, like, it wouldn't be great news if I was him, but I wouldn't be super terrified, because if they were really serious about it, they could actually do something instead of, just changing the language. And also, she put the onus on the Palestinians and saying that, this is the deal on the table, this 6-week ceasefire, take it or leave it. And of course, they're not going to accept it, because it's not like it's. And they offered their own deal too. It's funny when people always mention this. Say, well, Gaza, they rejected this deal. It's like, look, that's not how deals work. Like, what they rejected was a proposition. They rejected like a one-sided strategy. They've offered deals too, and in fact, they offered for a full ceasefire, which is what they want. And the full ceasefire they will surrender all the prisoners they have, all the Israeli prisoners, in exchange for all the prisoners the Israelis have. And the Israelis have like 3 times more, by the way, prisoners than the Palestinians have. So yeah, I think that it's just a misdirection to say, well, we're offering the ceasefire and they're not taking it. Well, what do you want us to do?
Even that language, prisoner versus hostage, is so fucking loaded.
It's so true.
Right?
I did it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good point, man. That's a great point. I didn't even catch that.
I wasn't even accusing you, but it's natural. Like,
yeah,
the propaganda seeps into us even, and it's like, yeah, no, that doesn't make any sense. And this entire thing, like, don't get me wrong, fuck the entire administration. This entire maneuver, this like, oh, there's this negotiation going on, is like such quintessential distilled liberal moderate bullshit. It's like it's the Karate Kid, Mr. Miyagi. You walk on left side of the road, you're fine. You walk on right side of the road, you're fine. You walk in the middle, squish like grape. And like, that's what they're doing. Because what does a ceasefire do? How does that do anything? Because if you have a ceasefire that's temporary, it's 6 weeks long. Okay, so we're just gonna keep killing people again after that? Why? Like, if we can stop killing people for 6 weeks, why should we keep killing people after that? It makes no sense. Like, there's no way. It doesn't require any negotiation with Gazans, with Hamas, with whoever, to just stop killing people. That can be done unilaterally. You are the far stronger nuclear superpower fighting a small city which you have held captive for almost 2 decades. Like this, it's so clear. Whatever. We've been through this, guys.
I know, right? I know. It's Groundhog Day with the shit. It's terrible.
But I will say, I want to very much emphasize that as much as it feels like nothing is happening, there has been significant movement. And that isn't to say anything good about the Biden administration, but it is to say that for decades, there's been zero movement on Israel's position in Palestine. I'm sorry, on Israel's position in Palestine, on America's position in Israel. And we're starting to see rapid movement relative to that. And so, like, if you put it in that perspective, I'd like to just push back against doomerism, because the things that people are doing out there, that the people in our audience who have been watching this content, who've been commenting, who've been sharing it with their friends and their family, and that's not just our content, that's everyone's content about this topic. Like, you are making a difference. Like, continuing to talking about this, going to the primaries and vote undecided or uncommitted, it is pushing the powers that be. It is making people uncomfortable and forcing them to change their actions ever so slightly. So let's keep it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to like piggyback on that a little bit, like I had somebody comment on one of my recent videos, something like, "Oh, this has been going on, for 70 something plus years." But it's like, yes, but like no one, it has never had the eye of the world like it currently has right now. Like it's not in any history books that, any of us were, or that I personally was taught, like through like grade school, middle school, high
No.
school, college, like nothing. Like it's never been in everybody's face. It's never been a topic that you can just talk to like almost any rando off the street and they'll have some sort of opinion about it. Like it's not occupied this amount of space in like the global eye like ever before. So like there is no better time than now to actually push some form of resolution for these people.
Yeah, that's true. I like both of those sentiments from you guys that, yeah, it's bad, but we got to push forward as much as we can, do the small part that we can. We're not the president, we can't, unilaterally change anything, but we try to affect the small circles we can. And I do like John's point of pushing against doomerism. It's real easy to do that. It's real lazy and it's kind of fun, rooting for the end of the world. It's pretty easy to do.
You like rooting for the side that's probably going to win.
Yeah, right? Yeah. And let's be real, we've all been there several times that look, the human experiment has failed. Like the quicker this asteroid comes, the better. We had our shot, we blew it, give someone else a chance. But it is good to remember that. And which is why I try to focus on the comedy part of it, is that just think about what Vice President Harris said the other day. She said that what's going on in Gaza is devastating. It is an inexcusable tragedy, and it needs to stop right now for about a month and a half. And then we can go back to doing the exact same thing, and then we're cool with it. It's like, come on, that doesn't make any sense at all. But I don't know. It's dark, but you got to make the best as you can.
All right, guys, thank you for watching another episode of The Left Wing. I'm John Cooper from Counterpoint Politics, and I cannot thank you enough. You are the reason that the algorithm shows our videos to other people. And if you happen to just be watching the episode we made this week about how we need to put more left-wing people into power, well, that is the one tiny thing you can do to contribute to that effort. Someone else who is contributing to that effort is our recurring guest and good friend, E.K. Powell. I want him to tell you exactly where you can find him if you haven't followed him already.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm E.K. Powell. I am What's Good English on YouTube, on Instagram, and on TikTok. I started out making a lot of content about African American English and like basically linguistics thing, how linguistics is kind of used as a bit of a discriminator and stuff like that. But I also make a lot of political content now. Sort of got awakened by some other creators in the field, like these two wonderful gentlemen here, and just couldn't stay silent on some issues. So you'll see a little bit of language stuff and some political stuff, some economic stuff and stuff like that. For me, I've said stuff like so many times, but thank you so much for having me on the episode. I really appreciate it.
Hey, want to thank you all for watching the show, and I want to thank EK for doing the show in English, because he does not have to do that. The man speaks 9 languages. I'm not joking. So, you really did us a favor here by making this, intelligible to us morons up here. But thank you guys for watching the show. Feel free to check out the rest of our stuff. We have episodes that come out pretty much every day, and check out EK's content. We'd all appreciate it. Thanks so much.